that means a lot to and then it rubs somebody else the wrong way. It's challenging because you want to provide an open space for people to share anything that matters to them. You don't want to, shut people down, but then you also want to make it feel safe for the other person
Hmm.
as well.
Yeah,
So,
someone brings in a political comment, somebody takes offense to it, and they want time to respond. And then they respond, and the other person wants to respond, and then the other person wants to respond, and it just turns into an ongoing. Then, if without the boundaries like the empathy circle, somebody goes on like Jana can talk for quite a while, without and sort of fill the space, and I think I just didn't facilitate it well. I should have said, up, meeting's over. If you want to talk politics, just call for an empathy circle, which is great, because, and I love Jana, she's really great to work with, very enthusiastic and really hard worker. But yeah. So,
yeah, that's interesting because you didn't see it coming, I'm sure.
mhm.
When you were getting into the meeting, you didn't expect it to be politically charged.
It
And
was
so,
at sort of at the end, and one person makes a comment, and then it kind of starts, and it's like, you gotta say, no, we're not talking about that. That's not the top. This is a planning meeting. Stay on topic. So yeah, I
yeah,
feel like
well,
I
that's
didn't handle
challenging.
it well.
Well, always learning, and
Yeah,
you can't learn from a situation like that until you've experienced one, right?
yeah. You should join our empathy, our conflict workshop. There's a process called restorative circles. It's
Hmm.
created by a guy named Dominic Barter that uses, a lot of the sort of the framework of the empathy circle. I got a lot from him, stole a lot of sort of concepts, from him for he was one of the influences for the empathy circle practice. And and then I sort of modified it to be, I call it restorative empathy circle. So it's just using the empathy circle, sort of active listening for conflict.
Yeah, I think
And
that's
Lou
amazing.
wants to is creating a course, around that. And a lot of people are interested, how do you deal with conflict?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, because I was thinking about this on Saturday after I left the facilitator training, that I've never been in an empathy circle where there's been conflict. And so my experience with an empathy circle is very different from maybe somebody who, for the first time, they come in because there's a conflict
Mhm.
and they need a framework to help them work through it. And so I think that my experience of it has been a little bit sheltered just because I've only empathy circled with you
Mhm.
and with other facilitators and other people who already see the value of the practice. And so we've never talked about anything that is controversial at all.
Yeah, did you see that video I have of the sort of it was a conflict I mediated with the Extinction Rebellion group in Santa Cruz.
I'm not sure. I know I've seen some of the videos, like the rally in Berkeley. I'm pretty sure is where that was, where there was a political rally. Is that right? But I don't
Yeah,
think
I've
I've.
done a bunch of those. Oh, there, I just found it. So I'll put the link in there. Um, so this is example, partial example of a restorative empathy circle. Oh, I put it into the wrong place. Put it into the Extinction Rebellion. I mean, into the AI.
Oh,
That's it. Did that come? Did I put it in the right place now?
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember. Yeah, we talked
Okay.
about this, and then yeah, I was thinking that you were doing something in person, and so I
Oh,
was thinking, trying to remember a video of that. But this is, yeah,
okay.
I've definitely seen this.
Yeah.
I applaud each one of them for being willing to have this put up on the internet.
Yeah, I
But
made it a point. I
I,
said I'm willing to facilitate it if you are willing to have it be public. And then when it came around for the actual circle, they didn't want to make it public, but they did a bunch of the pre-circles public, which I thought was pretty good. And so that's again the process that if you have a with the training, you talked about it's always pretty, everything's in the circles you've been into. It's been very positive. I had added a section, a module, not yeah, just a session on conflict, and we did role play. I wanted to kind of show how you take the empathy circle into a conflict, and then I made a scenario where a family is in conflict around inheritance, and they all feel that they deserve the inheritance, and then they have to argue about it, and then you facilitate that. So it was sort of sort of moving from the empathy circle into giving you some practice with a restorative empathy circle.
and so is that in one of the coming weeks that I will experience that?
No, they kind of dropped that just for keeping everything shorter. But I think
Oh,
it could be part of another module, on conflict. I think it would be a good intro to the process, to a module on conflict. So,
yeah, that would be really helpful. But you said Lou is putting together a whole training for restorative empathy circles.
yeah, he's kind of plugging away at it, and um, he's giving us doing a short, small group, workshop,
Mhm.
kind of informal, on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, go for a couple hours. And I think the topic he wanted me to he uses the restorative circle process, which is that's that certain structure, which I've sort of modeled into what I call restorative empathy circle. And so he wants me to facilitate, the one today, and I think I'm going to
Mm,
do it around that issue with Jana and Jonathan and Masha. That's going to be our
yeah,
topic. So,
I think that's great because it's relevant and it's
yeah.
real world. So it's not just a made up scenario. So I think it'll be really powerful.
So what
That's
have you been up
cool.
to? What's
Well, I've been up to COVID.
you
Um,
got COVID?
yeah, I had it all
Oh
last
dear.
week, and so I'm still trying to recover from that. I didn't go to campus today because I just still wasn't feeling well. And I have two kids homesick. They all got something different. They got like a stomach bug, and nobody else got COVID from me. So thankfully, I'm the only one dealing with that. But um, yeah, and I turned in my second year project, which is basically like a
Yay.
master's thesis. I turned it in
Wow.
yesterday.
hmm
So, like, I turned in the first draft 2 weeks ago and then had a whole bunch of revisions to do and turned in the final draft yesterday. So, it's it's been crazy just trying to deal with being sick and having sick family and trying to get that turned in all at the same time. And I had a major presentation on Friday. It was that I remember. I don't know if you remember, but I was going to come down to Berkeley, not Berkeley, Burbank, excuse me, um,
Yeah.
to present at a conference. And so since I had COVID, they had me present on Zoom. So it was amazing that it was still possible to do it, but I was very foggy brained the whole time. And so there were a couple of times that I kind of forgot what I was doing and had to bring it back and like get myself to like actually pay attention because I was presenting. Um, so I don't know if you've had COVID, but that's one of the
hmm
symptoms that
Yeah.
I've had is a little bit of foggy brain.
hmm
So anyway, I hope I get better. Um, but with that being the case, I probably shouldn't meet for too long today since I have two kids sick upstairs and I'm still not feeling great myself.
And you were
Um,
taking the training. I didn't know you were somehow I didn't register that you were taking the training.
oh yeah.
Bill said that you're working in some study. So you're
Right. So, you and I have talked about maybe doing a study on the empathy circle practice, collecting data in between each turns before and after the circle as well. So I just have to, what I'm realizing is that any study that you get the idea for ends up being a lot of work. And so I have to just decide if I'm going to have this be my dissertation or if I'm going to put this off until later, until after I have my dissertation completed, because data collection is just such a huge undertaking. But anyway, I have two of my research assistants who are taking the training as well. Um,
Hmm.
so Joseph and Grace, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos, but they're
Mm-mm.
two undergraduates who are fantastic and they've been participating in the training. And so if we do end up moving forward with it, then they would be able to help facilitate some of the circles as well. And that would mean that there are three of us who can kind of tag team with the data collection. Um, it might just need to be that. So, what I'm realizing going through the facilitator training is that you have a lot that you're thinking about as you're facilitating. So, not only are you participating in the circle, but you're also keeping time. You're trying to help make sure everybody's keeping the practices. You're the
Mm-hmm.
one that
Yeah.
created. So, I don't have to share all those details with you, but I'm starting to feel concerned about having the same person be the facilitator as the data collection person. So I might need to have two people, like one person who's only focusing on
Oh, mm-hmm.
facilitating the circle and the other
Right.
person who's focusing on collecting the data. So we'll just have to see kind of how that plays out.
Well, I hope you do study the empathy circle because I would help, and I also can be part of any study. I've done I don't know if the test, to be whatever that test is
Yeah,
called.
like is it a city training?
I mean, the
SITI?
test, if to do an academic study, you have to do that test, right? There's a test that, I don't know, the IRB, or they do have the IRB, but to do the IRB, I think they call it IRB, but it was
Hmm.
a whole test I had to do. It's all about the morality, or the
Ethics.
ethics. That's the word, ethics, for doing a study. So
I do you have like a certificate that you got at the end of that?
there was some kind, but I don't know where it is, or I'd have to even kind of work my way into it because it's been quite a while since I
Hmm. Because
did
I
that. But there was
wonder.
some kind of there's a website you go through and you study, and you got to take these exams. You take, like, I don't know, it was like 10 exams or something.
SITI, or sorry, C. Oh, sorry, we had a
Yeah.
connection issue.
Oh, yeah.
Can you
Yeah. I
hear
don't,
me?
yeah, I hear you. Yeah, it's sort of a glitch. Sudden
Okay.
glitch.
So the training that we use is called CITI,
Oh,
CIT.
that can,
Does that sound familiar?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, if you've already done that, our IRB would need to see your certificate
hmm Yeah.
to know that you've already done the training.
hmm
Um, so, and obviously, it makes a lot more sense to move forward with it if you're a part of it. So if you can't find the certificate, you'll have to do it again
hmm I
through
hate to do it
BYU.
again, but I think I could. If it doesn't expire, does it? Do you
I
know?
don't,
Is it?
I don't think
Mhm.
so. Let me see. Um, let's see. Let's see. Clinical research focused curriculum. I just know that I have the certificate, but I don't remember if it needs to be renewed. I'll look into that
Okay.
and get
Mhm.
back to you on that. But yeah, if you could look for your certificate, um, that would simplify the whole process because they'll need to see that in order to let you be, what do they call it? Like an external researcher,
Mhm.
third party researcher, something like that. Because
Yeah.
you're not part of the institution, they would need to get special approval. And that's one of the things they definitely need. And they would need your resume. I don't think I needed to do a background check because I did get into the BYU research system before I was officially a BYU graduate student because I was working in a lab So I kind of had to go through the same process that you would need to go through. And it definitely slowed down the process of getting IRB approval because I was an outside researcher, but they still like expedited it and got it through as quickly as they could to so that we could get the research approval. So yeah, I'll look into that on my side, and if you could look into it on your side, I think that'd be very
Mhm.
helpful. This might be something different that I'm looking at here. Let's see. I'll just share my screen so we
Let
can
me give
see
you
if this is
co-host.
the same thing that you did.
Okay. Oh yeah,
Does that look familiar?
that does. Let me
Okay.
in the city. City. And you took that?
Yes. And then I mean I haven't had to renew it since then, but I know that all of my research assistants have had to take the same training, and all of the other research assistants that I've worked with that are like working for other people as well, um, in order to do any of the research, but in particular where you're collecting data from human subjects. Um, Let me
Yeah, I just
see.
brought it up and I can let me
Do you have, um, does it say that you have a login?
yeah, I actually just logged in.
Oh, awesome.
It says courses completed 1, years of membership 5.
Okay,
In my records. Oh, yeah. Can I show you? I can.
sure.
Okay. Okay. This is a city basic course. Oh, do now. I don't know what that is. Conflict of interest. Oh, I don't know what these other ones are. Conflict of interest. I guess that's what was a specific study. Oh, that was like the Green Bay. So
Okay,
there's
so I
a
wonder if,
empathy.
go ahead.
That was for a specific study that they were going to do. And like I think I mentioned that, they have a lab there at an empathy lab. I haven't heard much from them, but that's what we are sort of preparing a study. And they just it was just like they were going to, they had so many questionnaires. It just got so complicated. So um, anyway, they just saw that it needed to be, got to keep it simpler. For
Yeah, I think that you can get such better quality data if you keep it simple. With this project that I just turned in yesterday, we had tried to collect too much data,
Mhm.
um, and people got really frustrated and stopped filling out the questionnaires. And so, whereas the questions that were at the beginning of the survey, we had like almost everybody fill out every single one of those, but by the end, it was less than half of the participants that filled it out. So that, I mean, that renders those questionnaires at the end just kind of unusable, and which is unfortunate because we're trying to see if there was character development over the course of our intervention that we did, and we can't say definitively. I mean, obviously, in any study, you can't say definitively anything, but we really don't have a strong base to say anything for those questions that were at the end of the questionnaire, because it was a good 20 minutes that they were just filling out a questionnaire in silence, and they got bored. And
Mhm.
of course, the group of people that we were working with were teenagers, and they have a shorter attention span than adults do. Um, but that's just something that we always need to keep in mind. If we're fatiguing them with asking too many questions, people get frustrated.
Yeah, it'll change the nature of the empathy circle too.
Yeah, definitely. Um, One
And
thing I
also,
was thinking about. Yeah,
I
go ahead.
just wanted to just, I've interviewed a lot of the academics, like I don't know if you know, for empathic accuracy, William Ickes, for example, and William Miller, who created um, motivational interviewing, which is a very
Mhm.
empathy based. So anyway,
Yeah.
it could be a resource to kind of connect. I don't know if it's helpful to have stuff run by them. I could probably reach out to some of these, more elderly researchers that might give advice or something. I don't know.
I bet they won't like the term elderly, but
They're usually
experience.
retired. There's a lot of, yeah, retired academics, I guess.
Yeah, I know that Dan
Emeritus.
Batson is retired now and trying to work on a book that he's writing now. So
Who?
Dan Batson.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Have you
I,
talked to
I
him?
just no, I haven't, but I just listened to a podcast where somebody interviewed him, and he said that that's what he's working on now. But I know that you've interviewed him, and I've listened to that interview. Um, it's great. And I think it would be really helpful to get some of the insights from people who've studied this their entire careers. Um, so, yeah, going into it, I would imagine that we could design the study, but then run it by them and
Mhm.
see what insights they can share with like which scales to use, what's too much, what's going to fatigue our participants, all of those kinds of things. Um, I think I told you that I'm trying to validate a new scale
Yeah, I
as
saw it.
well. That, yeah, okay, that's right. We did talk about that. Um, I on my first round of validation, it didn't look like we got very good results from it, and I'm trying to sift through why that is. So I wouldn't want to use it in an actual study until I can make sure that I have good internal consistency with the scale, like that all of the questions are actually getting at the same thing. Um, and so there are just some stats that we have to do to figure out which ones don't work, and then we have to use our intuition and theoretical understanding to figure out why they don't work, and then iterate.
Mhm.
So I'm not anywhere close to being ready to use that in an actual study, but ideally what I would want to do is validate the scale and then use it as part of this study. So I'll just have to see how, like, what's possible with that, because we can use different empathy scales that are already validated, but like we've discussed, there's all sorts of issues with the different scales.
There's not a
So
single one that I like. The Kharkov trucks, I think, is the one that was sort of the original, kind of original one based on Roger's work. So the direction it was going, I thought was something of interest. Yeah, because it was more like, what is it that you're actually experiencing within the context of being listened to by someone? How well are they listening to you? How well are they hearing you?
I like that. And I know that we talked about that before as well, where it's you want to get the perspective of the listener and the speaker to get at, are you feeling heard, as well as the listener asking them how well are you listening,
Hmm.
because if there's a disconnect there, that's also really important information. Because if I think that I'm listening really well but you don't think I'm listening really well, then that means that I'm not listening
Hmm.
as well as you need me to listen.
And you've got the silent listeners, so you've got three
Right.
different types of perspectives, and that could be pretty quick. If it's just and the silent listeners, because they have time, they could actually be. It wouldn't be too disruptive for them to be filling something out too, even while they're listening. Just having that up. Uh, on the screen. You know what I mean? It's like with the listener, the active listen, the speaker and the active listener, they're going to be engaged and they're going to need a little time afterwards to sort of rate,
Mm-hmm.
do any kind of rating. Whereas the silent listeners will be able to be kind of listening and being able to use a little bit of the time while they're listening. Maybe check
Yeah, and I
some
think that
boxes.
that will probably change the behavior of the listener and the speaker because they
Mhm.
know they're being actively rated.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm an active listener and I tend to zone out, but I know that those silent listeners are watching me,
Mhm.
then I'll make sure that I am 100% engaged the whole time. So it is going to change the nature of like the extemporaneous experience with the
Mhm.
people in the circle. So I mean, and that's just with any scientific thing. If you are observing it, it's going to change.
Right.
And so we just have to recognize that as a limitation of the process.
And there's also it can be recorded, so there could be external raters as well of the recording. So that adds
Yeah.
another. It's going to add multiple levels, and I think I'd mentioned to you that Rogers referenced a study where they took samples of six of the top therapists, uh, and they all have their own different methodologies, and they had recordings of them, and then they had 40 evaluators, and they evaluated the level of empathy with of the therapist empathy. Did I mention that one to you?
Maybe at some point, but I don't remember the details.
Okay. I haven't found the study itself, but Rogers mentions it in empathic and unappreciated way of being. And he
Hmm.
says that of this, it was like of the six therapists, top-notch therapists, two of them, or two or three, they said did a terrible job of being empathic. So, and so anyway, so that's it was just that there's another way of rating, right? That you can have the people that rate themselves, the observers, plus it's recorded, and you have another set of evaluators.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot. It reminds me of a study that one of my professors told us about that he did where they had men and women interacting with each other. And they were in separate rooms and they were just talking over the phone. But then there were independent evaluators who were only able to hear one side of the conversation. And so, for example, like they would just listen to the woman, and then they would say how flirtatious she was,
Hmm.
and then the other evaluators would only hear the man's side and they would rate how flirtatious he was on the phone. Which it's very interesting that they what they found was that um, I can't actually remember all of the details of it, but they found that the woman became increasingly more and more flirtatious throughout the course of the conversation, regardless of what the man was saying.
Mm.
And so I think it would be also interesting if we were to do this on Zoom. I'm sure there are ways that you can just hear one side of the conversation, because I think that would be interesting to not hear the like. So let's say you only hear the speaker,
Hmm.
and then you see how they respond to the way that the other person is
Hmm.
hearing them, but you don't actually hear the reflecting part of it. But
Right.
if you can just look at them and you evaluate, do they seem like they feel heard?
Mm. Right. Yeah, you could edit out.
Regardless.
You could edit out the reflection, right? You could
Yeah.
just edit together the speaker speaking.
Yeah. And I think that would be interesting. And then you
Yeah.
just have a video that's just the speaker. And then like through the course of the empathy circle, does it seem like they feel more and more heard, or is
Hmm.
it less and less, or is it kind of somewhere in the middle?
Yeah.
I think that would be interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of different factors to look at. The other is I do think that evaluation could be helpful for people themselves who are listeners, that they could learn and grow from the information. You know what I'm saying? So it's not just, hey, here's this study. It's something that the information would be a growth promoting for becoming a better listener, maybe.
Yeah, that's
Be-
interesting because then that could be like another tier of the study. So there's
uh-huh.
the actual like interaction itself, then there's the evaluation,
Hmm.
but then there's also you play it back to the person and you see what they learn, and then you
Uh-huh. Yeah.
evaluate
Uh-huh.
them
Yeah.
after again. And so there that would be so much data.
That adds an iterative improvement quality, maybe to
Yeah,
yeah.
because that's something I think that we don't really capture in a lot of these experimental studies is we get like just the situational value and we don't see the long-term effects of
Hmm.
training programs. And so that's more of a developmental psychology approach rather than social psychology, because social psychology is all about, okay, we have this format, like the
Hmm.
empathy circle is a format, right? And how do you respond in this format? And then you let them go about their lives, and you just take the data from that one little like
Hmm.
snapshot in time of how they handled the actual moment in the empathy circle, which that's only a very small part of a much bigger
Yeah.
picture.
There
Really
could be
like,
a longitudinal aspect of it. Is like after 6 months, after a year, you fill out a questionnaire. It's like, what has been the impact on you? Because, I think, I'd mentioned stories and I hear it all the time. Like, someone just says, oh, I was driving with my son. I remember, she mentioned when I was in Santa Barbara. So I drove to San Francisco with my son from Santa Barbara, and then he started talking about some family issues, and I got defensive. And my son said, "Oh, whatever you say," kind of dismissing, just kind of ending the conversation. And then she thought, "Oh, I've done the empathy circle. I can just reflect back." So she started reflecting back what her son had said, not adding anything, and that kind of opened him up to start sharing more. And instead of her becoming defensive and trying to defend some family dynamics, it affected her experience. And I've heard a lot of stories like that, with so that's like sort of the longitudinal
yeah,
aspect. How long does that last? Or yeah.
yeah. I wonder. That makes me think of another level of complexity of this. Um, do you think that people being involved in an empathy circle for their very first time, do you think they see the benefits as well as people who have done it several times? So I guess I'm thinking about it from the perspective of recruiting, like who are the participants in this study? Are they people who come in and this is the first time they've ever been exposed to it? Or do we recruit from like your base of community
Mm-hmm.
members who have already been trained in the practice and then see how much they're able to actually like look at the experience from a research perspective. So
It seems like the broader is people who haven't done it before or have little experience.
yeah, I mean that's what I was thinking originally, and I'm at this moment I'm kind of thinking of this complexity of this is a whole new format, and you have to fill out all of this data
Hmm.
throughout the whole process. So you're already new to this dynamic and it feels weird. And I mean,
Hmm.
I'm sure you've seen that.
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
So because the format itself is just kind of foreign to people, so it takes them several rounds of going through the being a speaker, being a listener, being a silent
Mm-hmm.
listener before people start to feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And so what I'm concerned about right now is if they're not feeling comfortable with it, we're going to be getting that
Right.
artifact of their discomfort. And we might think that people are just really uncomfortable talking about whatever. But it might just be because they're new to the practice
Hmm.
that they're feeling uncomfortable.
Yeah, there's definitely an anxiety aspect because you're learning the process. So, it could be addressed by everyone does an empathy circle or two without
And
any
then
sort,
go through.
and then go through it because there's definitely that's why we like to go for 3 rounds. Everyone gets three
Mm-hmm.
turns because round one and two, there usually is that level of anxiety, and then it slowly dissipates, and people start feeling safe, and it's like, oh, this is pretty good, So,
And I even find that each time I get into a circle, I kind of have to get used to it again.
hmm.
And so, although it gets faster each time I do one, I still feel that not that I feel anxiety about it, but it just feels artificial
Hmm.
sometimes. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I have to like get back into the zone of this is how we're doing interaction right now. And so it takes me a good 2 or 3 rounds before I'm ready to feel like I can just relax into the process. which I think is maybe that's because I'm overthinking it. I probably overthink it more than most people, just because I'm thinking critically about everything empathy related right now.
Hmm.
And so I'm not a good example of how normal people are, and how they would respond in an empathy circle. But I just know that in the facilitator training, that's something we were talking about last week, was that it does take people a little bit of time to like relax into the process.
Yeah.
Um, and so, that is important information as well. Um, and maybe that's information that can inform the way that facilitators facilitate a circle, and they can tell people to expect that even going into it. So if it's their very first time going through an empathy circle, they can say something like, this is not a normal format for a conversation. And you will probably notice that it takes you 2 or 3 rounds before you feel comfortable with this process. And that's okay. That's to be expected. But just try to relax into it and allow the process to help you to open up or something like that.
Yeah, that's great. I had sort of done that periodically, but it hasn't been a sh- you know
A
a
part of a script.
fixed part of the script. Yeah, because it's definitely something in just knowing that you're going to feel some anxiety, that you're not, the only one. I think helps put people at ease. So we're trying to make people feel comfortable and at ease
Yeah.
with the process. So
Yeah. So I
another,
wonder if,
oh, go ahead.
I guess, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, no,
Before I forget this thought, you remember yours, but before I forget this thought, um, in doing an experimental design, we have to have a script that is exactly the same for every
mm,
single circle. We can't have it be like, oh, well, this facilitator gave a little bit more information and thus people felt a little bit more comfortable, or their personality was really the dynamic that made people feel comfortable, whereas this person is really awkward and they didn't facilitate it very well. Like we want to
mm-hmm.
try and make everything as uniform as possible.
Yeah, that can be done
So
with a video. So you just
yeah.
show a video, and I have a video that I show often, but it seems like everyone likes to, do their own, but then you get such a variety of, like
Yeah.
at the last summit, Jonathan, did the how to, and, he kind of wanders off, and around, and, it's not like, yeah, kind of ad libs extra stuff. So having that and having visuals, I think is helpful too.
Yeah, your video I think is really the right way to go, because
Mhm.
if we just require everybody who participates in the study to watch the video, and they can't move forward if they haven't watched the
Mhm.
video,
Yeah,
then that really helps to like make it uniform.
yeah.
Was that what you were going to say
No, the
earlier?
other thing was I was just kind of popped into my mind that uh, Tanya Singer, I think we might have mentioned it to you before, but she had been a very big in the she does empathy and compassion research at Max Planck Center and University in Berlin, and she had done a lot of study of compassion, but then she shifted to more to uh, dyad dialogues, where people like spend some time talking to each other, and then she kind of mapped out all the benefits of it. And I just thought that if you check on what she's been doing, there might be some tips, some maybe some insights from her studies on the benefits. Like she was looking at how longitudinally, I think that people's anxiety went down when they had someone who they could speak to, but she wasn't doing active listening, I don't think. But anyway, it was
Mhm.
just a study kind of along the lines of that we're talking about, more the benefits of dialogic, relating. So
Yeah, I think that would be really beneficial to read through her research and see what she's already learned, so that we don't have to try and replicate things that she's already learned in that process. Um, and I have also wondered, I know I've talked to you about this, that it's interesting how the dynamic shifts when you have 4 people in a circle versus 2 people in a circle. Because when you and I have done empathy circles, we've been able to respond directly to each other. And the one thing that in a group of four, there are definitely benefits because you get to have those extra listeners,
Hmm.
and it kind of forces you to slow down and listen to more perspectives before jumping in and sharing your response. Um, I also have noticed that I feel less connected with any one member of the group when I'm speaking to you, then you don't respond to me, you speak to somebody else. And so I also have wondered about the dynamic when it's two people in a circle versus when there's four people in a circle.
Hmm.
So, what are your thoughts about that? Like maybe
I
studying.
like, yeah, I like four because you have two people, a listener and a speaker, and you're adding it, the silent listeners, which is more like real life in the sense, right? You tend to be in groups, communities where people, uh, and so you're adding an extra perspective. Uh, you're adding the silent listener perspective, so it's kind of a richer perspective. So that's that, and then I like participation. If you get five people, six people more, you have less personal participation. So there's all these variables, right? Level of participation, how active you are. With it four, it's a certain level. If you have two, you're very active. You get up higher, it's like less active. You get maybe kind of bored. So there's all
Yeah.
these variables that can, and then there's the turn taking. Like it could be something in the study, even like what is a marathon, like an empathy marathon, where you go for 6 hours or 8 hours. What happens to your consciousness at that? Because as I mentioned, I've done 4 hour or longer family empathy circles, and it's a very interesting consciousness that you get into. Uh, when you
That
have
that
that level.
sounds fascinating. I mean, it almost sounds like a meditative practice
Hmm.
where
Yeah,
you have to give it some time and then you really get into that sweet spot of the meditative practice.
yeah.
That's interesting.
So, but it sounds like you're liking the direct two people. I mean, there's the whole. That's another variable, right? There's the
Yeah.
variable two people, three people, four people, five, six. What happens, and there's the variable of time. Speaking turns, the length of the circle. So all that is flexible and can be iterated on and experimented with, and
Yeah, I would wonder if I don't know if you've ever done it this way where you have two people speaking and they speak back and forth to each other, but then you have silent listeners just observing the whole time. I wonder if that might be another interesting component because then you have the dyad conversation that feels a little bit more natural, where you're able to respond directly to the person, but then you still have that component of other people observing how it's going. I don't know. I just think that there are a lot of different ways that we could look at this and slice it up in different ways and look at time, number of participants. Another thing that I thought about during the facilitator training is one person, while I was speaking, she was a silent listener, but she put a little heart emoji when
mm-hmm.
she like resonated with something that I said. And so it wasn't her turn to respond, but I felt immediately connected
Mm-hmm.
to what she was saying. That what I was saying was connecting with her. And so I thought that might also be another thing where in maybe one experimental group, they're not allowed to do that. In another one, they are allowed to do
Mm-hmm.
that. And just maybe look at level of social connection. Like if you feel more connected with the group, if you're able to have some of that like immediate feedback. I don't know.
Yeah, if they're
What are your thoughts
shaking
about
their
that?
heads and smiling, you see the silent listeners reacting in some way. So it's when they start. There's kind of a level. Like I've had one where the person was holding up signs, in the background, and just he was a
They got
sign maker. It was
is that
like it was just
super distracting?
yeah, it was really distracting. But as a facilitator, it became my turn to speak. And then when I spoke, I mentioned the signs and how annoying it was. So I kept it within the circle. And then he actually stopped, I think.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was more of a political
Uh,
type.
oh, okay. So it wasn't actually helpful. It wasn't like showing support. It was
It was him
heckling.
taking the attention. It was him kind of grabbing the awareness and attention, being part of the dial, of the conversation. So, but that's another aspect is to have a table where maybe where all the different factors that are, you can change the factors of an empathy circle, right? And see the full spectrum of all the different factors that can be changed within an empathy circle.
Yeah. And then from a research perspective, that ends up becoming problematic because the more different variables that you change within
Hmm.
the study, the more you have to, like, the more participants you have to have in order to account for all of those different variables.
Yeah.
So trying to keep it as strictly exactly the same as possible is going to be the best for one study, and then maybe the next study then we change a variable, and then the
Yeah.
next study we change another variable. That's why, I mean, really, that's why these studies take so much time, and that's why there's a place in the world for scientists who can make an entire career out of studying one thing,
Yeah.
right? Because there's just, you can't change everything all in one study. You have to build and build and build and build, and it takes years to do that.
Yeah, it's like Icky's, his study of empathic accuracy. I mean, he spent his whole career
Yeah,
like just kind of working on that one aspect of it.
yeah, that's intense.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning to actually study every factor, but just to know what all the factors were was
And be intentional about it.
yeah, be clear. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. So that would be a part of the design, is just making sure that we know why we're choosing one specific variable. And if it's, let's say to make it interesting, we have two experimental groups that differ slightly, and then we have a control group
Hmm.
that doesn't have the empathy circle. So maybe we have just like four people, they're given the same topic, but they don't have a framework. And so that's our control group. And we get to, we still stop them every 5 minutes to have them fill out the
Hmm.
questionnaires, and so they're still giving the same amount of data, but they don't
Hmm.
have the framework. But
Hmm.
then maybe we could change one variable within the empathy circle, but already that means we have to like double the group of people like that we have involved in the study, because we have now three groups rather than two. um so it would just be more complex, but it would be more interesting, and
Yeah,
it
it's
would
good
take
to
it
have.
would take a lot more time and a lot more
Hmm.
money, but
Yeah.
we'll have to just see how
Yeah,
that.
that sounds this for me it's really exciting, just because there's nothing, hasn't I haven't seen any work on the empathy circle. We tried it and it was just too complicated, and so I think it could be I just see the benefit. So yeah, really excited about it, about the potential, and also
Yeah.
the learning aspect of it. I can just see how it would. I mean, some people don't want feedback. I know Bill I don't want to be judged. In an empathy circle. But I think it was Rogers who said that it was one of the best learning experiences was to go back and listen to yourself, how you had what you had done. So there's that, and then this is a little bit different because you're getting people giving feedback on it.
Hmm.
So
Well, if that's the case, that seems like it would make sense to have participants already be familiar with the circle,
hmm.
so that they're to a point that they are a little bit more ready to receive feedback on it, as
Yeah.
opposed to the very first time they've ever
Hmm.
been introduced to this weird framework, and now they're being evaluated on how they can do in this framework. It just kind of feels
Hmm.
like the anxiety level might be a little bit too high.
Yeah. So at least one time to have gone through the process at least once, or
Yeah, maybe so. Which is why I think it would be helpful for me to start doing empathy circles in person on campus. And maybe it's like every Friday we have it advertised that anybody can come and participate in empathy circles.
Hmm.
Um, and so the more people we have, like within my community, familiar with the practice, then they come in and they can be the research participants at that point
Hmm.
because they already are familiar with it. So
Yeah.
just lots of ideas
Yeah.
rumbling around.
Mhm. Had you tried it with your family? You were gonna try it with your.
Oh, and I was gonna report back. No, I ended up isolating from my family for a
Okay.
week, which was really hard, but also kind of wonderful. This is just to be in my own little world for a week. It
Great.
only got hard sometimes when I could hear people fighting, but I had to keep my distance, you know. But it this week, I think since everybody's almost back to normal, I only have two kids homesick right now, which still seems like a lot, but I think they'll be back at school tomorrow. So this week, I think would be a good time for me to actually do that with my family. So I'm sorry. I know that I said that I would report back and tell you how
Mhm.
that went,
Yeah, no problem. Just
and it just didn't.
yeah. Well, with any of this, let me know if there's anything you need help with. Glad to do what I can.
Thank you. Let's yeah, let's keep this conversation going. And now that I'm done with my thesis, I can shift gears. And that's so this actually wasn't supposed to be due until like the end of December. But I turned it in early so that
Mm-hmm.
I can shift gears sooner and start
Mm-hmm.
getting my planning done. So, I mean, I'm now like, as soon as I defend next Monday, then I'll be able to fully switch gears into empathy mode, which I think will be awesome to be able to do that.
Do you see
So,
any problems with that? Kind of the shifting to because you had sort of your thesis, right? Your PhD project, and you're kind of shifting it a bit. It sounds like, or
so yeah, that's what I need to shift to is to deciding if for my dissertation and I terminology. So the thesis was the second year project. Dissertation is in order to get the PhD. So that's like the 4-year project. Um, and so I'm shifting gears into being able to actually focus on empathy and decide if that other project makes more sense or if the empathy circle dissertation makes more sense. So I'm not sure yet
okay.
what
Well,
makes
if you have any
most sense.
questions about it, glad to chat about it, brainstorm, or if you
Yeah,
need
and I
an
think
empathy buddy call about it, just to reflect. Glad to, just do reflection too.
thank you. In 2 weeks from now, I think I'll be in a place where I will have actually sat down and done some like mind mapping and figuring out how to organize all of my thoughts on this front. And I think I'll be able to start making some progress toward
Mhm.
which project I'm going to work on.
Okay, great. Well, talk to you about it then. So,
Okay, you have a good week, a good 2 weeks.
mhm.
And so I guess here, just to recap, what I'm going to report back on is how things go with my empathy circle with my family. And I will have made some progress toward mapping out what a study would look like. And what you're going to report back on is, excuse me, that city training, if you can find your certificate from that. And I'll see if there are other requirements through my university to have an independent researcher joining us. And apparently I can't talk anymore. So
Okay.
sorry. Excuse me. I will see you in 2 weeks.
Okay, very good. Look
Okay,
forward to
take
it.
care.
Bye. You too.